Hey everyone, if you've been checking your bank account hoping to see a $2,000 deposit, President Trump just revealed when these payments could actually happen. And I've got to be honest with you, it's not this year. The White House is now more serious about these tariff rebate stimulus checks than ever before. Multiple officials are confirming that these checks are coming out. It's just a matter of time. But after reading through all the latest statements from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, National Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett, and President Trump himself, I need to break down what's really happening here, because the timeline might surprise you. I'm going to tell you exactly who qualifies, how much money is actually available right now, why Trump chose $2,000 specifically, and the political strategy that could determine when these checks actually hit your bank account. So let's get into it. Okay, so here's the situation, and I'm going to give it to you straight. The Trump administration is actively working on sending out $2,000 tariff rebate checks to Americans. These aren't traditional stimulus checks. They're being called dividend checks because they're supposed to come from tariff revenue that the government is collecting from other countries. President Trump posted on Truth Social recently saying, "People that are against tariffs are fools. A dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone." Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed this week we will see about the $2,000 rebate checks. But, and this is the important part, he also said, we need legislation for that. This cannot be done through executive order. It has to go through Congress. National Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett told reporters just days ago, "We're actively studying the matter and getting it straight." So, the White House is working on the details right now, but they're not dealing with Congress yet on this specific issue. So, when did President Trump say these checks are coming? Here's his direct statement. It will be next year, not this month, not December next year, meaning 2026. Now, I know that's disappointing if you were hoping for help before the holidays, but let me explain why the timeline is what it is. Because once you understand the money situation, it's going to make a lot more sense. Here's where we need to talk about the actual dollars and cents, because this is crucial. According to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the payments would be available to those making less than $100,000 a year. If they use that $100,000 income cap, roughly 120 million Americans would qualify for these payments. Let's do the math. 120 million Americans times $2,000 each equals $240 billion. That's how much money needs to be sitting in the tariff revenue account to send out these checks. Here's the problem. According to the Tax Foundation, the government has only collected roughly $130 billion from both new and old tariffs. So far, we're about $110 billion short. But here's what the White House is saying. They expect a large chunk of tariff revenue to come in between now and the end of the year. Somewhere between $50 billion to $100 billion over the next 2 months. If that happens, we'd be looking at somewhere between $180 billion and $230 billion total. That would be enough or very close to enough to send the checks out. Now, let me tell you something really interesting that Kevin Hassett revealed, because this explains where that $2,000 number actually came from. According to Hassett, real purchasing power for a typical worker dropped $3,400 under President Biden. Then he said that purchasing power has gone up $1,200 so far under the Trump administration. So if you do the math, $3,400 lost minus $1,200 gained equals $2,200 that American families are still behind. Hassett rounded it to $2,000 and said, "We're $2,000 in the hole from where we should be." That's where the $2,000 figure comes from. It's not random. It's supposed to represent what you've lost in purchasing power. What everything from groceries to rent to gas cost you more now than it did a few years ago. All right. So, based on what Treasury Secretary Bessent has said, here's who would potentially qualify for these $2,000 checks. The income limit, people making less than $100,000 a year. Now, we don't have the exact details yet, whether that's individual income or household income, whether it phases out gradually or cuts off completely. But the key phrase is not including high-income people. So, they're specifically targeting this to working and middle-class Americans. This would potentially include single moms working minimum wage jobs, trying to keep up with rent and food costs. Veterans living on fixed incomes watching their benefits by less and less disabled Americans who are already struggling with medical costs. Essential workers who've been showing up every day but aren't seeing their paychecks keep up with inflation. Unemployed workers still looking for decent paying jobs. Retirees on Social Security who've lost $2,000 in purchasing power. Gig workers and self-employed people. ISK who've seen their income squeezed by rising costs based on the $100,000 income cap, about 120 million Americans would qualify. But here's something important. Kevin Hassett suggested that the number might actually be lower, maybe 60 to 80 million people by the end of the year, if there isn't enough tariff revenue to cover everyone. That means if they don't have the full $240 billion needed, they might lower the income cap even further to make sure the people who need it most get help first. Now, here's where things get really interesting from a political standpoint. Both Scott Bessent and Kevin Hassett have made it clear this requires legislation. Congress has to pass a bill. The president can't just write these checks through executive order. Right now, the Senate has been working for over 40 days to pass the government budget for fiscal year 2026. That has to be the priority, keeping the government open and running. The dividend checks will come after that. But here's the political strategy that's reportedly happening behind the scenes. According to multiple reports, Republicans are planning to put this bill on the House and Senate floor and force Democrats to either support it or oppose it. If Democrats support it, great, Americans get their checks. If Democrats oppose it, Republicans will tell voters. Democrats don't want you to have your money back, and this is where the timeline gets even more interesting. If Republicans put this bill on the floor sometime in June, July, or August of next year, that would be just months before the midterm elections in November of 2012. According to reports, Republicans believe that if Democrats oppose this bill right before an election, it would hurt them badly with voters. So Republicans are confident that Democrats will eventually support it. They'll have to politically, but this also means the checks might not go out until closer to the midterm elections. And let's be real, that strategic politicians on both sides understand that sending out $2,000 checks right before people vote is politically powerful. So the timeline isn't just about when the money will be available, it's also about when it makes the most political sense to send it out. Okay, so knowing all of this, what should you actually do? First, do not wait for this money to handle bills that are due now or in the next few months. If you're struggling right now, you need help right now, not next year. Here's what you should do immediately. Call 211 to find emergency assistance in your area for rent, utilities, and food. Apply for SNAP benefits if you haven't already. Don't leave money on the table. Contact your utility companies about payment plans and low-income assistance programs. Look into your state's emergency rental assistance if you're behind on housing. Visit local food banks and community organizations that can help today. Second, keep your IRS information up to date. When these checks do go out, the IRS will use the information they have on file, either from your last tax return or from previous stimulus payments. If you've moved, changed bank accounts, or had any major life changes, file your 2025 taxes on time when tax season opens so your payment doesn't get delayed or sent to the wrong place. Third, watch out for scams. This is critical. You will never have to pay someone to get your rebate check. You will never have to give someone your social security number or bank account information over the phone. The government will not call, text, or DM you about these payments. If someone contacts you asking for personal information or payment to speed up your check, it's a scam, hang up and report it. Fourth, pay attention to the news about congressional action. Once a bill gets introduced, that's when we'll know the exact income limits, the exact amount, and the actual timeline. I'll be covering that the moment it happens. One more thing you should know. The Supreme Court is currently weighing Trump's tariffs. Some people are concerned that if the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, the money would disappear. But according to the Trump administration, they have multiple legal options. If one law gets struck down, they can impose the tariffs under a different law. They're prepared to kick the can down the road if Democrats continue to challenge this in court. So, the Supreme Court ruling might slow things down, but it's unlikely to completely stop the plan. I know I've given you a lot of information, and some of it is frustrating. Waiting until next year when you need help now is hard, but here's some genuinely good news. First, the White House is serious about this. This isn't just talk. They're actively working on the details. Kevin Hassett confirmed they're actively studying the matter. Treasury Secretary Bessent confirmed it's happening. President Trump keeps talking about it publicly when multiple high-level officials are all saying the same thing. It's real. Second, there's political motivation on both sides to make this happen. Republicans want to deliver money to voters before the midterms. Democrats don't want to be on record opposing $2,000 checks for struggling families. That's actually good news for you. It means this will likely pass once it hits the floor. Third, the amount is significant. $2,000 isn't going to solve everything, but it's nothing either. For a single person, that's rent for a month or two. For a family, that could be months of groceries or catching up on bills. It's designed to address that $2,000 hole in your purchasing power. Look, I'm going to be real with you about what we know and what we don't know. What we know for sure, the White House is planning to send out $2,000 tariff rebate checks. They will go to people making under $100,000. Exact details, TBD. It requires Congress to pass legislation. The timeline is next year, 2026, not this year. There's about $130 billion in tariff revenue now, with more expected. What we don't know yet, the exact income limits and phase-out details, whether it's $2,000 per person or per household, the exact date the bill will be introduced in Congress, how many people will ultimately qualify, whether it'll be closer to 60 million or 120 million recipients. What's realistic to expect? The earliest these checks would go out is probably spring or summer of 2026, possibly later if Congress takes its time. The amount might be $2,000, but it could be less if there isn't enough tariff revenue. You'll likely get it automatically if you qualify, just like previous stimulus checks I know. Waiting another 6 months or more is frustrating. If you're a single mom trying to figure out how to pay rent next week, or a veteran dealing with medical bills, or someone who just can't make ends meet anymore, telling you to wait until next year feels impossible. But here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to wait for everything. There are programs available right now that can help you today. There's emergency assistance, food programs, utility help, rental assistance. Don't be too proud to use them. They exist for exactly this situation. And when these $2,000 checks do come next year, they're going to help. They're designed to help the people who need it most. And that might be you. If this video helped you understand what's really happening with these tariff rebate checks, please hit that subscribe button. I post videos every single week breaking down benefits, assistance programs, stimulus updates, and money that you might qualify for but don't even know exists. Check out the video I'm linking in the cards right now. It's about emergency assistance programs you can access today while you're waiting for these checks. Don't wait until you're in crisis. Get help now. Drop a comment and let me know. What would you do with a $2,000 check if it came next year? How would that change things for you and your family? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know your situation so I can make videos that actually help you. Remember, you deserve support during hard times. You've lost purchasing power through no fault of your own, and this rebate is supposed to give some of that back to you. We're going to get through this together. I'll keep you updated the moment anything changes with Congress, the bill details, or the timeline. You can count on that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the